Conchego da areia, ele dorme a noite inteira. Não há o que duvidar, ali é seu lugar. Eu não te impeço de chorar. Pode perguntar onde é meu lugar. Tudo certo da correnteza, os pinguins na natureza, até a paciência.
Do you know that the French have two words for bicycle? Un vélo and une bicyclette. But what intrigues me the most is one is masculine, le vélo, and the other is feminine, la bicyclette. Anyway, let's go back to our video.
Psychologist, take one.
As somebody who travels frequently between the United States and Europe, I am lucky to have the ability to ride my bike on both continents. And truth to be told, I enjoy both. I love riding my bike in the United States, and I'm always very excited to have an opportunity to ride in Europe. But if you were to ask me which of the two I prefer, my preference would go to Europe. And the main reason for that is Europe-friendlier bike culture. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that I do not like the bike culture in the United States or that I believe that the bike culture in the United States is bad. I do not believe that at all. But it is just that as a cyclist, you feel more welcome in Europe and you feel a little bit safer. There are 6 key differences, in my opinion, when comparing riding a bike in the US as opposed to riding in Europe. And if we go from the most obvious to the least obvious, in first, I put bike lanes. In Europe, bike lanes are everywhere, and not just in big city. And not only that, but very often they are dedicated lane as opposed to being just painted stripes on the side of the road, as you so often see in the United States. In addition, in Europe, cars do not infringe on the bike lanes. You will not see a delivery truck parked smack in the middle of one, as you so often see in New York City, for example. Not only are bike lanes much more common in Europe, but they are also treated as legitimate transportation thoroughfare. In the United States, they are more like available spaces, which the cyclists are allowed to use if nobody else needs them. Second in my list is transportation. In Europe, cycling is used as a legitimate means of transportation by millions of people to commute to work every day. And I have to say that some cities in the United States, like New York, for example, have gone to great extent to encourage people to ride their bike to work. And I must say that over the years, I've seen a significant improvement of the number of people commuting to work in the Big Apple. But it simply doesn't reach the level of what you see in Paris, Berlin, or Amsterdam, for example. In the United States, cycling is still considered first and foremost a form of exercise more than a legitimate means of transportation. Third on the list, helmets. Go to Paris, go to Berlin, go to Amsterdam, and you will see people commuting to work with their bikes everywhere. But you will also notice something else. Virtually no one wears a helmet. I guess the Europeans do not consider cycling to be dangerous enough to warrant wearing a helmet, so they don't. Once I asked a German friend of mine, why was that? Nobody in Germany wears their helmet. And his response was, well, it is better to ride a bike without a helmet than it is not to ride a bike at all. I gotta think about that one. In number 4, I have bikes. Except for the serious amateurs who like to ride road racers on the weekend at their hobby, everybody else in Europe seems to like to ride old and shitty bikes. A shiny new bike in Europe is not cool. No, not at all. If you want to be cool in Europe, you find the oldest, most decrepit bike you can find, and then you run it to the ground. Then you're cool. Number 5. Bike shops. The European bike shops are simply amazing. They basically only cater to serious, passionate cyclists who will not hesitate to splurge in order to get the bike or the gear of their dream. So they go to great lengths in order to make their store as attractive and as fun as possible. Very often, they will serve you an espresso or a cappuccino and even a pastry at times. You see, Europeans do not buy their kids' bike or casual bikes from bike shops. They go to large sporting retailers like Decathlon, who carry cheap bikes made in China. And last on my list, but probably the most important, cars. With cars, it's very simple. In the US, you are in their way and they will clearly let you know. In Europe, they expect you to be there, and not only that, but very often they will lower their window and yell some words of encouragement. There is no doubt that there are significant and obvious differences between the bike culture of Europe and that of the United States. But in my mind, it is more a case of the United States being behind Europe than it is the United States being really different from Europe. I do believe, as a matter of fact, that they are following the same trends and going in the same direction. The two cultures are in effect converging, I believe. You know, talking about differences, do you know that in Italy, it's considered inappropriate to drink any kind of milky coffee past roughly 11 a.m.? So that means no skim latte, no cappuccino in the afternoon. Rough. And so has spoken the psychologist, and until our next session, I fare thee well.